Oh, from New York, you are listening to Extra Time. I am Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, David Goss, Dr. Tommy Scoops, the jet setter. In a big hurry today, folks. Has to go to the airport.
Zach Wilson and Brees Hall right now?
This is a New York Jets thing. It's like, wait a minute.
Fight you.
Oh, boy.
Season's
I will fight
over,
anybody that makes me watch the Jets on a Sunday night.
I love that everyone else has to experience that.
It's awful.
Like me.
Good pivot, Goss. It was the beginning of the season. He had all this optimism and was like, oh, dude, but the Giants also suck.
You guys are the worst team.
You know what's happening right now?
Baby. Welcome to Caleb Williams.
Actually, speaking of pivots, Tom heard that little dig off the top about his flight that he has to get to, but he's 45 minutes late to the pre-show meeting. And he was like, I think I got a topic that I can distract him with.
He texted us this morning and he said, hey, I have a flight, which is so much further after our show ends anyway, that it was basically not worth mentioning.
It was irrelevant.
And he said, can you all be in? Can we get done on time? Okay, great. And then he showed up 45 minutes late.
If I didn't say that, you would have been going on your monologues before the show started as Andres being like, all right, you guys ready to go? You guys ready to go? You would have just kept on going for the next hour.
Stop trying to distract. And then on his walk in, it's like, hey, Tom, you didn't really contribute to the rundown. He's like, no, I got some bullet points in there. I was doing it on the walk. Thank you. Appreciate you. Round one of the MLS Cup playoffs are over. We're going to break down all the match threes.
For this show? I've never seen one.
What's that?
Do we do rundowns for this show?
Format for those doesn't matter either. I'm a stickler for format in any manner here. So we're going to go through match
Maria
threes.
just jumped out of the window.
Straight up.
Like, he doesn't look at the rundown. He doesn't know what time it is.
No. Match three. We have three of them. We'll go through those, do some post-mortems on your losers, those eliminated. Talk about the open coaching spots in MLS. There are 8, maybe even more, depending on Nico Estevez's future with Dallas. I believe he is out of contract. We have Tommy Scoops here with us, so he can help us understand what's going on there. Before we get there, couple championships won this weekend in North American soccer. Go Bats. Congratulations to Gotham FC winning an epic NWSL championship against OL Reign. Bummer for Megan Rapinoe, obviously. She handled that as well as any human being could possibly handle it with, curse words and at least as much good humor as you can when you potentially tear your Achilles. But that game was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was so awesome.
I was visiting my in-laws, and my wife is a alumni of the same high school as Midge Purse and Amani Dorsey, who both were on Gotham. Obviously, Midge Purse was player of the game and is amazing. And shout out Our Lady of Good Counsel. I don't know what the beginning is. I just know the good counsel part.
The Midge Purse photo with the cigar and the player of the match and the championship trophy is like maybe the best celebratory photo I've seen in any sport ever.
I wish I could be that cool even for a few seconds ever.
We do have some cigar photos of you in the group chat floating around, so maybe we'll have to repurpose those. Maybe you could be Midge Purse for Halloween next year.
I do not look that cool. There's no chance.
That's fair.
Like, it's not even Halloween.
And congratulations to Phoenix Rising, who won a crazy penalty shootout against Charleston Battery to win the USL Championship. Missed their first 2 PKs and win a shootout. The odds are very,
Scored
very
in the
low.
90th to tie, and then missed their first 2 PKs to go down 2-0, and then won the shootout.
That's a roller.
Rocco Rios Novo. Ingle.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Emil Cuejo, LA Galaxy legend.
For those of you that are recognizing Eddie Munjoma.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Munjoma's still on my FC Dallas depth chart. I found that today.
Nice.
So I got to get that one deleted.
Oh, boy. All right, let's get to it. Best thing we saw, round 1, match 3. David Goss, get us started.
If you're not watching, you should be.
Right.
Spider-Man webs now.
We did a poor job of that, by the way, with the Matt Miazga reference off the top of the last show. You were blowing kisses and making heart-shaped hands, and nobody explained that. I listened back to it just to check.
I'm doing Spider-Man things because if you didn't watch in Atlanta United's victory in Game 2 of this series, because there's 3 games this round, that's how the format is set up.
Yeah. Important to know.
You guys both looking at me.
Yeah, the format.
You're just the only other person in here.
Jean De Silva scored the second goal, going right into halftime to make it 2-1, and then someone handed him a Spider-Man mask, and he did it as a celebration. I believe it was for his kid.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, super sick.
Yeah, and then Diego Rossi scored right out of halftime to make it 3-1 in this game. Game 3, elimination game because of the format in this round. And him and Cucho started doing Spider-Man webs at each other. Turns out Cucho had a mask in the building for his own goal celebration. He did not score, but he still put it on post game, which when you win a series, you get to do whatever you want.
Right.
A little bit bold, but either way, I like pettiness. I like this stuff. I thought it was fun. One of the reasons I like this format, because there's a potential 3-game series in the first round, is the idea of there being a little bit between teams, of teams disliking each other as the series goes along, and then hopefully as the years go along and there starts to be a little bit of rivalry. So I thought that was really fun. I thought it was fun that they sort of like took it on the head and were like, we lost game 2, we're gonna crush this team.
Right.
And then obviously the rest of the game was great.
The environment in Columbus was amazing. Like,
it was spot on the whole week.
Oh yeah.
Houston was fine. I mean, when Griffin Dorsey scores, I don't know if I ruined someone else's moment there. He goes to the crowd, and the crowd is nuts.
Yep.
That's what playoffs are made.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. The Tifo from Tifo Sweat with the state of Ohio, Be Massive, really, really cool. So was the Cucho mask, the Spider-Man mask, was it the Miles Morales? I was hoping he would go Venom.
Yeah.
Like full Venom mask.
Didn't seem like Venom.
2 big white eyes, all black. Like we're taking you over, Spider-Man.
Mouth, right?
Yeah, with the
because he's a bit of a
Yeah.
This is the most I know about this. I'm more of a Marvel guy.
This is Marvel.
Oh yeah, good call.
Yeah,
big Marvel guy.
Yeah, I'm
such
a
big Marvel guy.
I'm more of a Marvel.
Spider-Man's a bit of a boring one, but he's from New York, so I have to like him.
Don't tell Shande Silva's kids about that.
Family.
All right. Best thing I saw. Speaking of Houston, Griffin Dorsey, the American Roberto Carlos, and Steve Clark go id and ego in the post-game celebration in the locker room. Ben Olsen has to give out 2 game balls. He just one for regulation, 1 for penalties. He gives the regulation ball to Griff Dorsey. The penalty one goes to Steve Clark. Griff Dorsey's like, this is my stage right now. I'm about to step up. I'm about to say something really deep. And he just goes, let's go Orange, and smashes the ball off the floor back into his own face. It was absolutely the best thing I saw.
It was Big Ten championship level.
Oh my God. Go
quality.
Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Just, he was absolutely juiced. And then Steve Clark with his kid, his small child, stands up and gives a very calm, like, hey guys, we haven't done anything yet. Like, there's something to play for here. Celebrate, but be chill, because we got, focus on the next round. So I immediately just thought id and ego, id being the base emotions, base reactions, like animalistic Griff Dorsey time, and then Steve Clark just being a grown man.
The funny part to me is like if you like read that back and be like, one of these 2 players, either the goalkeeper with a little bit of a mullet that goes absolutely bonkers during the game, and then the right back who meditates by celebrating, which one of these guys is going to throw a ball off the ground into their own face? I would have said Steve Clark.
The meditation is just to create more energy for the for the scream.
Yeah, it's storing that primal energy deep inside. The other one I got to throw out there, Thorolf Farsson getting twisted for the playoffs, going full cornrows.
Yeah.
As an Icelandic, I mean, it was that just took me by surprise. So that was delightful in a way that I didn't quite understand. But Tom, unfortunately, you got nothing here.
I thought that you said the best thing we saw from round 1, match 3. You guys picked the other 2 games. There's only one other game to pick from.
Oh, on your walk-in? When you weren't participating in the
I was prepping meeting? This entire time, this whole weekend. Okay. My whole life is prepping.
It's like, oh, I'm not there. They took all the good stuff.
No, he's got his hoodie up the whole weekend just thinking about the show. Yeah. Just getting locked in.
Well, the Dallas Seattle game.
All right, B-Rabbit, let's go.
Wasn't the most aesthetic. It wasn't the most fun. So I'll go a little bit off the board here, and I think my favorite part of that game is just how excellent João Paulo is. And like we were talking about him as an MVP candidate a couple years ago. Then he got hurt for a while. And the Seattle team that just kind of hovered around, like pretty good, but not quite top of the conference most of the year. And it was easy to kind of forget about João Paulo. We were giving Hector Herrera all this praise, Coco Carrasquillo all this, and then just Friday night was just another time when João Paulo was like, oh yeah, like he's one of the 3 or 4 best midfielders in the league, and he can absolutely dominate a game.
The pass from Sebastian Miazga straight to João Paulo, so frustrating watching that game because they are pointing. The entire FC Dallas team is like pointing to right back, like, hey, just passes to the right back. And Miazga's like, no, I will be playing this hero ball directly upfield into the center of the park where I have no teammates.
But I'll make sure to do it from outside my own box so that I can't be in recovery position.
It was
when
so frustrating to watch.
I think when you think of Seattle, it's a team that's not super effective in transition. They like slow build up. They like to rest defense or like deep blocks apart. So it made sense. Like you give them that goal, it's going to open up the game.
Hey, Rusnak got the goal though. He made a great run. He had a good finish. That was the difference. And Dallas are still ruining maybe what happened in match 1. Okay, let's go into these matches and try to figure out how they finished, why they finished that way, and what the matchup looks like in the conference semifinals. Because we got a great batch of conference semis. I know we have a break for the international break, but from the 3-game series, remember format very important, to a single elimination conference finals or semifinals, finals, and MLS Cup. We'll have to wait it out. So the weekend after Thanksgiving is when this gets going. 2 games on Saturday, 2 games on Sunday.
Which I love. That's like sports weekend. It's going to be cold out. You sit inside, and then you get back-to-back games. So you get like you're watching the first game. You're like, because games end, especially single elimination, right? They end on a high. And then like last night, it was with Columbus, Atlanta. It was like, oh, I could do another one of those.
Yeah.
And now you're going to get that second one.
Exactly. So we've got Seattle hosting LAFC on Sunday at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, but let's dig into this match 3 for FC Dallas and the Sounders. A 1-0 win. We sort of went under the goal. Rusnak scored it. We'll get to a postmortem for Dallas. I think it's probably best, given the aesthetics of this series, to mostly look ahead. This seems to be how Seattle wins, both in this series and throughout the course of 2023. Shut them down on defense. Hope you get a moment of magic from somebody, but margins are probably going to be pretty tight. Difference is the other side's margins are going to be much tighter than the Sounders. Is that enough to win MLS Cup?
It might be in the Western Conference right now. Like, it might be enough to get out. I don't know. I don't feel great about any of these teams, and there's positives and negatives there. Like, there's a lot I like about each team that's left and why they could win. But you trust Seattle the most because of where they've been. I guess I was hoping in this series, though, coming out of the regular season, that was how I felt. And I kind of thought maybe we'd see something this series which would make me believe that they can create more chances, that they can be more dangerous. I think Jordan Morris playing the way he's playing is the best thing they've seen so far. Of like, he looks like an effective version of Jordan Morris, which he hadn't, and he's scoring, he looks confident. But I was hoping through the Dallas series, and even with as good defensively as Dallas is, that you would see a Seattle where you're like, oh, okay, they can pull teams apart. They can create chances, whether it's Leo Chu playing well, whether it's Nico Ladero getting more minutes, whether it's Raul Ruiz coming back and being effective, or Christian Roldan. And I think Roldan did the most of all of those players I just named in this series, but not at his highest peak.
I guess so, but I mean, look, like you just look at that starting 11, and it's still kind of crazy just think about all of the big playoff moments that Ladero and Ruiz have had over the years, and to see them as options off the bench, it's pretty crazy to me. Like, I don't
should they stay that way?
I don't think so. I think that one of them needs to come in for Leo Chu. I would lean Nico Ladero because I can't possibly imagine Ruiz could reliably be 90 minutes fit because he just hasn't played that much since he got hurt, since he came back from injury. And I'd want him in at the end of the game because he's an absolute assassin. And Nico Ladero, again, like, I understand that sometimes I get guilty of this, like a little too loyalty or too much, like, I guess, romance, thinking of in the back of the day, oh man, thinking of all those great moments of Nico Ladero and Raul Ruiz as if they're still both at their apex prime. But I'd still, in a big moment in a big game, I'd go, if I lost with Nico Ladero on the field for 90 minutes, I'd be like, that's fine. Like, I'll live and die with this guy. I don't care for all the moments that he's come through. And so for me, I would start Nico Ladero for Leo Chu. Leo Chu could be useful off the bench for one of these players towards the end of the game if you need to change things up. But I don't think he's been effective enough in that round 1 series against Dallas. Part of the problem of, like you said, that the way that they were playing and that they're like breaking down rest defenses, Leo Chu's out there to beat players one-on-one. He wasn't doing enough. He wasn't dangerous enough. So why not bring in Nico Ladero, put him on the wing, either him or Rusnak out wide. It'll be a super interchangeable attacking midfield trio between the way that they move. So I think that would give LAFC a lot of problems. And again, I would just, if you lose because, like, with Nico Ladero on the field, like, I'm good with that 10 times out of 10. Is
that what you would do?
I would have started him in game 3. I pretty much spent my entire preview for that game talking about how I thought the last 25, 30 minutes in Dallas made it evident that Ladero makes them a better team more repeatably in the things that he creates in the attack. And I kind of assume Brian Schmetzer would trust him. The other thing Brian Schmetzer does is he likes playing the same team if things are going well. So like that was the two sides that he was dealing with. I think there's interesting conversation going into the LAFC match because how healthy is Reed Baker-Whiting? Does he play? If he does, how does that change the calculus? Ladero likes to float left because Jordan Morris, if you push him out left, he doesn't really comfortably stay wide. Like, he will come inside, and you kind of want him to
Yeah.
with the way he's goal scoring. Nuhu doesn't get forward. Reed Baker-Whiting does, so that would still give you that width, but Lodero goes over there as well. So there's a few different ways you can do this and a few different calculuses. I'd be shocked if Ruiz Diaz started, and I wouldn't be surprised if Leo Chu still started. It just feels like at this point Schmetzer's there, and why would he go away from it? And then the last thing I would add in is, if you look at a match between these two teams, I don't think it's wild to assume you'll play 120 minutes. So if Lodero has 60 good minutes, you could bring him in the 60th, and he's on the field if you go to extra time, if you go to penalties, all that type of stuff. First, if you start him, you'll probably have to bring him off.
That's fair. And like I was saying that about Rui Diaz. It's the same thing with Lodero. It's just I trust him more to be fit because the guy's a robot. Like he covers so much ground. He's incredible. Like you've just seen it over and over again. That if it was 120 minutes, I'd trust him to be able to last that distance. But the more important point for me, because if he's not, maybe bring him in at halftime or like whatever. Like I want him on the field at the end of the game.
All right, let's push it ahead. That's sort of the trickle down for Seattle after 3 games against Dallas. Now it's LAFC. It's the better than Bob. It's the 2019 upset. It's all these things that we've experienced in the past between 2 of the best teams in the Western Conference. It's 3 cups in the last 7 years.
Yeah, biggest, I think, too.
Yeah.
I think that's what we all felt coming into this, of like, neutrals want this, is 3 cups in 7 years, a CCL, a team that's been to a CCL final. Like, they are 2 of the trendsetters in the league. This feels like a series where it won't be a weak link game. Like, greatness will win because there's so much talent on the field versus, oh, what's the hole that you can take advantage of? Oh, they can't score. Like, that doesn't feel like that's going to be the case, and I think that's pretty exciting.
All right, LAFC. We sort of know what the deal is for the Sounders. We also know what it is for the black and gold. It's Denny Bouanga, man. It's 36 goals in all comps. It's watch out when he hits it where he wants it. And he has been relatively unstoppable. But what else is there right now for LAFC? Is that the worry? Is like, well, you don't need Carlos Vela. Well, it's also because Carlos Vela is not the same game-changing force he once was. Oliveira is talented, but hasn't yet put it together. The midfield is sort of I don't know who's going to be in the 3. Maybe that doesn't matter so much. In some ways, this is a team, in my mind, that's a little bit like Seattle. Very good defense, very good structure, except they have the difference maker that you probably trust over anybody on the Sounders.
I think he's probably the difference maker you trust over anyone left in the playoffs. Like, that's what, for LAFC, that's their trump card, is Bouanga is probably the best player left. He's probably the most dangerous, but they, in 2 games against Vancouver, scored 1 open field goal. So, like, to your point, that's where it stands. Yet they had 3 counterattacks on Vancouver corner kicks, and any time the ball breaks a line, everyone's scrambling because Bouanga is that dangerous. And I don't look at a Seattle team. I think they've got a lot of interesting pieces, but if Bouanga's out there on the left side, you're going to push Alex Roldan, right? So now João Paulo has to shade over and help. Yaimar's over there. Like, they have as good of options as they can, but Alex Roldan's role is not 1v1 defending. It's not staying home, especially if Nuhu's playing. He has to go. He's got to be a part of the attack. He's got to give an option around Christian. Like, he has to do those things. And I think there's space for Bouanga to pick up the ball then and do what he does best.
I think that's where you were watching that match, second match, and how Vanni Sartini handled Bouanga, and you're saying it's Atencio and it's João Paulo, and you guys have a job to do. Now, the difference for Seattle is that they're not going to have that additional central defender over there to sort of shade into as well, where you're routing into both 2 deep-lying midfielders, but also 2 center backs. And that's where you say, okay, right back, do whatever you want. Richie, Adekube, whatever. We've got the numbers back there to defend. But the good news is that in 2 games this year, Bouanga doesn't have a goal or assist against the Sounders.
But those were like pre-Leagues Cup, right?
Yeah.
That was like a while ago.
No, it was a little while ago. But he was, I mean, it doesn't matter what time of year it was. He was burning people up.
Yeah. No. I'm not
first
saying he
4
got
months.
better. I'm just saying, like,
yeah. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, I think all of those points are great. Like the gravitational pull that Denny Bouanga has on an opposing team, particularly in transition, but at any time when he starts to get moving, like you said, it's, again, I've made this comparison before. It reminds me of an incredible shooter in basketball, where it's like Steph Curry or something. It's like, transition, like, where is he? Like, we all need to focus on him. And that should be, in turn, making all the attackers around him better, but Kiki Oliveira hasn't had that final product yet. This is a game for Carlos Vela for me, I think. Like he still is a big moments kind of player. The attack, the way that balances out, if Bouanga, like, hey, your job is to stay on the back shoulder and make Roldan think about getting forward, or when he does, you're there to transition and we're going to be looking at you the whole time. So the Seattle central defense needs to shade over and give more space for everybody else. They need a big game for Carlos Vela as well. Again, he didn't start in the second game against Vancouver. It's Mario Gonzalez, which I thought was a bit of a surprise because he hasn't shown much down the stretch. Maybe that signing will turn out better next year.
He drew the penalty.
Yeah, fair enough. I still don't think it was a penalty.
Yeah, he fell down at the right time.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think Vela as a center forward in this game, similar to what Jesus provided in the last series, he's the first ball you play out into his feet for Olivero and Buanga running off him. And you want him on the field for set pieces and free kicks and stuff. I think 100%. Also, what you saw from Dallas was if you play off Seattle center backs and you start your press a little bit deeper, they're capable of making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Yaimar and Reagan sort of struggled with their mental clock of like, I don't want the ball anymore, but there's no options and no one's pressing me. And those were the two mistakes in game one that Dallas couldn't take advantage of. Now make it Buanga or Vela in that spot instead of Jesus, unfortunately. And you got a chance to finish those.
And the two styles of, like, again, LAFC are at their absolute best in transition when it's Buanga running into space or Vela playing something into space. And Seattle are at their best when they're kind of a little bit more methodical in possession. So, again, with this game being in Seattle, I'm assuming that they're going to have more possession. They're going to have more of the field tilt. They're going to be higher up the field, which, again, leaves so much space in for Buanga and Kiki Olivera and Carlos Vela to attack into in transition. So both teams, I think, are going to get what they want. It's just which side's going to prevail, which side's going to come up in those big little moments.
We had a thrilling scoreless draw, if I remember correctly, early in the season in Seattle. It was a game that was built up massively. I remember, this is going to be so good. Zeros.
Yeah, way back on March 18th.
Yeah. That's how,
Think about what the world was like on March 18th.
I don't know, man. It's a completely different one.
Yeah.
Is this...
the Knicks were making a run to the playoffs. Yeah.
Is this... If this is it for Ladero and Rui Diaz, do you have to play him if you're Schmetzer?
Nah, I don't think it matters.
You don't think so?
I think you have enough... Everyone has built up enough credit, cachet, whatever you want to call it, that their legacies are secure.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Schmetzer's legacy is secure. Their legacy together is... Like, if they lose 1-0 and Ladero comes on and he's the best player on the field and he should have played 30 more minutes, in 5 years, no one is going to look back and say, well, they should have played Ladero in 2023.
Wait, do you know
from
Sounders
the start.
fans? Have you met?
Yeah, true.
Have you met Seattle Sounders fans?
But you're going to talk about 2016. You're going to talk about CCL. Like, there's enough there. I think that's part of what makes this team good is like there is so much built up credit with a lot of these personalities that you have a little. I mean, Xavier Arriaga came in as a DP and like doesn't play, and it has not tanked the season or the experience. Rusnak's been moved all over the field. Atencio's worked his way into the team. That's been a positive. So I think there's enough experience with this team that you don't like sweat that.
I think Rusnak's got to stay at the 10. I think they can't start Leo Chu. Like, you don't want to bet on 120. I think you got to start Ladero and see where it goes with your best players on the field in that final moment. But that's just me. All right, before we get out of here, FC Dallas postmortem. So no Velasco in this final game. Obviously hurt his knee, out long term. No Jesus Ferreira, he was hurt. Brendan Kamungo was hurt for large parts of this series. And they lose 1-0. They can't finish. They can't create. Very predictable. So what's now? What's next for this team? And Nico Estevez is out of contract, Tom, so there are big decisions to be made.
This time last year, I was extremely bullish on the future of FC Dallas.
I picked them preseason. I think I picked them second.
Yeah, I had them up there as well.
Third.
I'm much more pessimistic at this point because Velasco's out most of the season, if not most of the season next year because of the torn ACL. Nico Estevez and technical director Andre Zanotto are both out of contract, I believe. Or I'm 100% on Estevez. I'm like 99% on Zanotto because those details weren't public. But that's kind of the sporting nucleus, the infrastructure. Again, with Velasco out for most of next year, Jesus Ferreira was really unconvincing over the last half of the season this year. So who knows what exactly you're getting out of him next year. Paul Arriola was broken physically most of the year. And then in the minutes he did play, did not look like the same player that he did last year, which was one of the best parts of this team. Looked like, and Giovanni Jesus is as torn ACL, he'll miss some time next year. That's a lot of really important players for this team. And I don't trust them to spend the money to make it better. They bought out Franco Jara before the season last year and didn't add a DP. Like, what was the point, right? Like, so yeah, they can add at least one DP and 2 U22 initiative players. Do you trust them to? Do you trust them to do one of those 3 things, let alone 3 of 3? Like, I don't. And like legit, I loved that trade for them. He's been kind of broken physically too. Like, there's so many things that I was super optimistic about this team. Not only are they not positives right now, several of them are negatives. And plus the injury stuff and the uncertainty with Zanota and Estevez and everything else and the lack of spend, I don't love their outlook for 2024.
I think that's a fair assessment, which is like the base is there. The base makes sense. There are pieces in this team. Martin Paz is an elite goalkeeper in MLS.
But he's going to go back to Europe at some point.
Yeah, but
and that time might be coming soon.
But not, I would be surprised if it was this offseason.
I wouldn't be surprised. I don't expect it, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. And Kosei Tafari, I think, is clearly a building block along the back line. So is Marco Farfan. So I think there's pieces in this team that make a ton of sense. The question is, how do you get from here to the next level? And I think it's fair to say you don't trust this team to make those moves. And the example I keep coming to for all these teams is FC Cincinnati. Like, Cincinnati was good last year, and they were like, yeah, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. We're going to sign designated players at the positions of need. We're going to get Mascara. We're going to get Santi Arias even off the scrap. Whatever it was, they made moves to push themselves to the next level. And then the one we talked about this year was the Rapids in the other direction of, like, the Rapids had a couple of good years and they were like, okay, this works. We'll just keep this level. And then they went backwards because you can't maintain it. And I think it's a fair worry that FC Dallas is in the Rapids camp more than Cincinnati's, but the pieces are there. And I think part of the Jesus Ferreira thing is, like, he had no support. He had no help. Hader O'Brien, to me, complete failure of a signing. He was a Golden Boot winner in Colombia. He's not that player. He's a TAM player. Jose Martinez didn't play a single minute in the playoffs. He's a TAM center back. So if you, and both of them are at the end of their contract. So if you just replace those two for equal players, you get 2 more rolls at the dice of that. If it works, you're a better team. But the Alan Velasco thing's really interesting of, like, do you sign a high-level player who is an Alan Velasco replacement? Do you sign one that will fit when Velasco comes back? I think it's a really tough needle to thread here. Needle to thread. Thank you. Of you've got a young DP, 22 under 22 winner, Argentine full national team call-up who will miss a year. Do you replace him? Or do you try and build the team assuming he comes back at full fitness and the team is good whenever he comes back, either at the end of next year or more likely in 2025?
The big challenge, too, is that for a team that, quote-unquote, doesn't spend, they did spend on Velasco.
Yeah, but they also got $18 million for Ricardo Pepi.
They spent the money they
spent
got.
1/3 of it.
Okay, how would you spend then? I think you're saying Ferreira probably drops in, whether you're playing a 4-4-2 and he's a second striker or he's, quote-unquote, a number 10. Whatever it is in a 4-3-3, you got to go get a winger then to replace O'Brien and Velasco, because you're saying Velasco, when he comes back, ideally is that 10 as well, or could play on the wing. You got guys that can move around. Kamungo could start right wing or center forward. So you're probably looking at, if you're going to try to elevate, at a winger and a forward.
Yes. And if it was me, I would ignore Alan Velasco. I would build my team as if he's not there.
Correct.
Who knows what 2 years looks like? If Jesus has a good summer with the U.S. next year, he might be gone. Yeah. Paul Arriola, is he going to be a DP? Kamungo might be gone. Like, if I was building this team, I would build my best team for next year without even thinking of Alan Velasco. And yes, I think you have 2 options. You can bring in a dangerous goal-scoring winger so that Jesus can drop in and create for him, for that player, along what we saw Kamungo do. Or you can bring in a true number 9 and drop Jesus in. Either way, I think it's fine.
Yeah, so my last point before we move on, DP9 for me is just, I think, the obvious one. But we've been saying that for a year because Jesus Ferreira is best as a second forward. He could be, Golden Boot-ish. Like he would be, he's an elite player in this league, I think, as a second forward with a real DP9. We haven't really seen that. The most we did was when Ricardo Pepi was breaking out. They were awesome, the two of them together. And I want to see that. But again, Nico Estevez, if he comes back, he's a 4-3-3 guy. And that's just is what it is.
Okay.
And again, our Dallas going to spend the money.
Before we move on, we keep saying Nico Estevez if he comes back. Like, do you think he's coming back? What do you guys think?
It wouldn't seem that he would be an obvious choice for one of the other openings. So it would seem like if Dallas wants to, he would come back. And I don't see why Dallas would choose someone else. As much as you regress from year 2 to year 1, you're a playoff team both years. He has a decent background in youth development. I don't think the lack of, outside of Kamungo, young players coming through is on Nico Estevez. I think the Dallas Academy had a golden generation, has taken a step back. I don't think that's his fault. And I don't think that there's anyone else obvious in the building. So you're going to have to go back out, find someone to come in and get integrated into your club. And that just seems like a bunch of wasted energy to get probably back to where you are now.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. RSL, Houston Dynamo. X-Dog almost got it done without winning a game. 2-1-1 draws, but this time Houston got it done in penalties in Houston. Hell in a Shell, that's what they're calling it. think got to make it a little bit tougher before we're really embracing the Hell in the Shell moniker. I think 1-1 draws at home in elimination games. Nah, it's not exactly hell, but that's just me. Houston, we're the better team for sure. But I mean, the doubts are what they are, which is who's going to score the goals.
Corey Baird.
I know, but yeah, sometimes.
Well, this time it was enough.
It was enough.
They won a playoff series. They host the next round.
By the way, that reaction from Ache on the header to bring it back off the deflection right into Corey Baird's feet,
which was the third cross of that segment of play. And that's what Houston does. They pull you apart, and then they find the gaps, whether it's players making runs or the little slip through ball. I thought Coco Carrasquillo was much better in this game, which created the space for the original cross on the right to come back from the left for the knockdown for the goal. And that's where Houston's at their best, when they are using every inch of the field to create space. Now, Quinones got put through 3 or 4 times again and did nothing with all of them. And that's also the problem in this team. But I think you saw Griffin Dorsey, whether it's underlap or overlap, huge gaps that he was able to take advantage of, especially the few times RSL extended their pressure and opened up a little bit. Houston played to their game plan, and they won 2 of 3 games in a playoff series. Like, they won both games at home. That's what you were looking for. And so I think for this team, they won Open Cup. They've now had a little bit of experience in this type of atmosphere. You have to feel pretty good about yourself coming into the next round.
It's a huge victory for Houston overall. The entire season is just a ticker tape parade, honestly. Where they were to where they've come to win a trophy. Year 1 of Ben Olsen is not defined by like shocking pragmatism. Instead, by beautiful soccer and Ache grinning from ear to ear. I mean, it doesn't matter what happens from here on out. The beauty is that they have an opportunity to make it even more special somehow. I will say on the flip side for RSL, it was a bummer to see Diego Luna miss a penalty that ultimately sends them out. He got the goal to tie it at 1-1. But that moment with Chicho Arango seemed kind of poetic, of Arango, consoling, a 20-year-old who balled out and who was balling at the time and saying, hey, dude, you have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm just assuming I wasn't obviously there. But he could have been saying anything. He could have been like, next time, make that freaking PK. But he probably was like, hey, you did everything you could.
I just think the key there is when we talked about Arango in LAFC, we kept talking about the contract he wanted, what he wanted to do. And I think part of it is money. I think part of it is like you want to feel wanted.
Yeah.
You want to feel a part of something. And he was never made to feel that way, especially his second half of his time at LAFC. And it's what he was looking for. But he's a Colombian, borderline international. He played in Mexico. He played in LA. Like, you don't know how he feels about Salt Lake, how he'll be there. And I think that moment for me was like, this is a guy who wants this team built around him. He's in his prime. He wants to be there. He is a centerpiece for your club. And after losses, you don't know what's going to happen. Like, that's where the fabric of teams falls apart. And I thought that was actually, if I'm an RSL fan, that's what I'm taking away is like, this guy cares. He cares about the young guys in this club. He cares about this club in general. And now you come into next year and you're like, he's going to be someone that will help elevate the players around him. And I thought he did it in his play over the course of the series. Their best moments were when he was on the field, not just his chances. Like, he created for his teammates. He made selfless runs, but then also to see him post-game go over to a guy like Luna and just be there for him.
There was just sort of a recognition, both by his teammates and by the fans, honestly, when he came on, of like, oh, things could change now. Like, this is sort of the missing piece for us. And, Pablo Ruiz, we've talked over and over about another missing piece. Let's just rock the RSL postmortem before we get back to Houston, Kansas City. Where you stand on them?
Really, really strong. I think all the points that you're saying about Chicho Arango, that signing's been an A+, everything that they've hoped for, both, again, in terms of on-field production and leadership and everything else. He is the building block. He is the centerpiece of this team. Pablo Ruiz was awesome before he got hurt. Justin Glad's a good center back in MLS. You have a couple really good young players in Luna, Gomez, Palacio, and I really like Palacio. I know that he hasn't been.
I thought he was awesome in the playoffs.
Like his his debuts after he got here in the summer, difficult to come to a new league as a young player. He was fine, good. I thought he got better and better. And
the whole point was to play him next to Ruiz and have their abilities complement each other.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm again, their starting 11 I think looks really good to me. They do have a couple questions, but I'm much more optimistic in them solving it because this ownership, since they came in, they promised they were going to spend money. It took a little while, and they are really actually spending money. Krylock's under contract for 2024, which isn't a great kind of cap value hit, but I think that they have a lot more around the team that's fine. I do expect Savarino leave. I just don't think he's a good fit with Mastroeni.
He was horrendous.
Yes. And he's been benched. He's been taken out of the squad for not defending. And then he got mad at the social media account for saying that he wasn't in the squad. And then they're like, oh, well, do you want to know all right, we'll make the reason public. You didn't defend. That's why you got taken out of the team for a week. Right. Like, so there's some fissures under the blanket there, like in the locker room. I don't expect him to be back. We'll see what happens. But then that gives you a DP spot. And where do you use the DP? I think a number 10 or attacker. If Severino leaves, you're going to need another chance creator to go with Diego Luna and everyone else. But again, like I think this is a really good spot for Real Salt Lake.
Pablo has mixed and matched in that lineup all year long. Like there was not doing lineups on pregame shows. It was just like, did he make a change? It was more, how many changes did he make? And does it fit on one hand? Because usually it was wholesale. What do you think with Luna and Arango and the way this team is currently constructed, Dave? What's the best sort of like base for them as far as how they set up and then where pieces, this attacker or perhaps number 10, would fit in?
Yeah, I think one of the things you said with Severino not fitting is like he wanted to be the 10 around another forward. That's Luna's role. It's clearly Diego Luna's role. He's clearly good enough to do it. So therefore, you either need a second guy up top to stretch and be an option for Luna to play through and play two, or you don't play that player and you can add another number to midfield or another center back and unleash those wing backs a little bit more. I think Brody can be high level in this league when he gets opportunities to get forward. That wasn't the setup that they ended up with in the playoffs, so he ends up off the field because they pretty much were defending at all times. But I think there are options there, and then that also would protect Ruiz a little bit more, because as much as we talk about how great Pablo Ruiz is, most of that's on the ball.
Yes.
Not off the ball. So if you create more numbers centrally, whether it's a third center mid near him or a third center back behind him, you make life a little bit easier for him, and that's part of what Nelson Palacios is supposed to do as well. So I think there's an idea there of like, those are your front two that you start with, or those are your building blocks, and then who fits around them. I really like Andres Gomez. He had a pretty good chance in this game, which would have been special early on to make it 1-0 and play from a lead. But I'm going to goss theorem it and be like, he's a young South American attacker, and I like what he brings. I think the big question mark is Pablo. Is Pablo the guy?
Yes.
Right? Like, new ownership group came in. They gave him another year. Do you think he 100% is there next year?
Yeah. Like,
okay.
Like Houston wanted him. Like it's more like he's somebody, if he hit the open market, he would have a couple offers.
Well, there's about 1,000.
That's also, there's a lot of teams to choose from, but he's somebody that he would.
Good time to lose a job or leave a job.
Right. Yeah. Like, again, I don't think that this
can speak to that.
I don't think that this is discussion really. Like, I think he's absolutely back, and
interesting.
He should be right. Like, why? Like, I thought that he's done very well. I thought the Pablo Ruiz injury kind of sunk their season, and I stopped taking them a little seriously towards the end. And then they recovered. All right, we need to change a little bit how we play, tweak everything, and they kind of got back on track at the end of the year. I don't know. This is a good team, and I think he's like, what he's done with Diego Luna has been awesome.
Yeah.
Like his strengths and Diego Luna's natural strengths came together to develop. Like, I was worried that was gonna, oh man, this might not be a good fit. He's just gonna be on might just be on the bench, whatever. And instead, Mastroeni gave him helped him get the X-Dog. And then Luna helped Mastroeni, hey man, we can have some fun out here, right? Like, so I don't know. I think it's a really good fit.
I think that's fair. I think over the course of the year they finished 5th in the West over the course of the regular season. Maybe a little underwhelming through Leagues Cup. Obviously frustrating. You lose to Houston, a team that you then beat 3 days later in the Open Cup semifinal for an opportunity to go. I think they would have hosted. Do I remember that correctly? Whatever it is, a chance to go to a final. So like some holes there here and there. I think there are question marks over the course of Mastroeni's career about what the ceiling looks like on his teams and the style he chooses to play with. But in terms of production, I agree that he did well. And the Luna thing is big because it feels somewhat obvious that part of the Blitzer group coming in and buying this team and the teams they buy is developing players. And RSL has an elite academy, the setup that they have, the residency that they run. There are a lot of good young players. You look at the youth national teams that are going to all these tournaments. There's a ton of RSL on those lists. Those players need to be coming into the team and being pushed in. He did well with Diego Luna. I think that's a good example of what you're hoping some of these other players follow.
I think there's some spots on the roster that need work. Center back is one of them. I mean, Vera and Glad, I guess, is your
You don't like
two.
the depth at center back?
No, it's not my
Weird.
favorite. Some teams need more. We come to find out. At forward, it's really Arango, and then outside of that, I'm sort of like, meh.
Well,
Rubin, Musovski
they are kind of stuck on
and
pre-Blitzer. Like, we're just going to bring in a bunch of guys maybe and sign them all to a few-year deals in case they hit. And then run, right, that's Rubin. That was Bobby Wood. Demir's still on there. That's Danny Musovski. And yeah, none of them are special or game changers. And the problem is Arango is similar to those guys because he does occupy center backs. He is a finisher in the box, where like Savarino's not similar to those guys. And so now with Arango, they're a little bit extra. And I guess the question would be, can you move some of those off your team and bring in someone different?
We will see. Pablo, a question mark as well in Salt Lake. Let's get it back to the conference semi, though. Houston Dynamo Sporting Kansas
Tom
City.
said Pablo's not a question mark, and we closed that segment with Pablo's a question mark.
It is a question mark, right? Like when the ownership came in, it was like, oh, I don't know. Would they want to start over with their own guy?
And then they re-signed him.
Okay. TBD.
That's how Wiebe runs his company. Contracts are just the thing.
This paper.
Yeah.
Classic playoff matchup. Dynamo Sporting Kansas City. I was raised on this in Major League Soccer. 3 straight years from 11 to 13. And then again in 2017. That was the last Dynamo playoff appearance. Of course, they got all the way, I think, to the conference finals against Seattle that year. That was the
that was the apex.
The Wilmer Cabrera run.
Elise Manotas.
Yeah. Yeah. New team now. They've only lost one game at home this season, the Dynamo, and that was to Paul Rothrock and the Seattle Sounders. And Paul Rothrock isn't coming out of the woodwork to rescue Kansas City, but perhaps they have some better players that could do that. Sorry, 2 home losses. I got that one wrong. Thanks, Anders.
Anders got that one wrong.
Yeah, thanks, Anders.
Anders only wants to talk about the Seattle.
I know, he like drove Paul Rothrock into my brain ahead of the show. He's like, there's only one, and it was Paul Rothrock. That was the one.
Oh, man, I wanted the other one to be LAFC.
It's Minnesota. It was Minnesota.
Yeah.
It was Minnesota. Okay. What is your first thought about this match, Dave?
It's going to be fun because it's 2 teams who, in the first round, played to their fundamentals, which is open up the field, play in possession, and try and move the ball a ton. So I think it'll be an open game. I actually think it's more comfortable for Houston because SKC, if they try and shut things down, are bad at it. And if they don't, there's space. Logan Ndembe out as well changes the calculus. And Rosero broke his nose in that last play against St. Louis. I assume he'll be back, but you don't know.
They said he would be.
Yeah, but
we'll see what it.
But like, I thought you'd be on time. You know, we say things all the time. You know, that doesn't mean when we get to game time that's actually what we're doing.
That's good.
So I think for Houston, you got to feel good. You get a home game, single elimination. You have now proven when in tough moments at Miami for the Open Cup final and against RSL that you can play your game and still win. There's question marks around finishing. There's question marks around a lot of things. But I think for Houston, like, this is the matchup you want in this moment.
I agree. And again, I like the macro view is that I think this is going to be a fun game. Like you said, both teams I think are going to try to play. There's a lot of quality. Again, like I put this Houston midfield over every midfield in the league, honestly. So I assume that they're going to win out in that kind of little battle. But then you have Johnny Russell, Alan Polito, and Shallow in the Kansas City attack. How does that go against the Houston defense? And then like, again, it sounds boring and it sounds simplistic, but a game like this, I think, is going to come down to these moments. And Kansas City have more quality in the attack in terms of finishers and guys who you'd expect or have more realistic expectations to show up in, like, to do something special in those.
Prime example, left winger is isolated. It's Quinones or it's Shallowy. Who do you trust to create a goal scoring chance or a quality shot?
Yeah, and same and again, Polito combining with getting into the final third, like who you more score of, Polito or any of the Houston attackers. Again, I don't mean this to be disrespectful or anything, but this is what, again, Bruce Arena, his quote on the playoffs, and again, this is all super simplistic, but it's like your DPs have to be your best players have to be your best players, and again, like, this isn't super revealing, this isn't a deep thought, this isn't something, wow, Tom, great point, I didn't even think of that. But like,
got it. This is not a great point,
guys.
No.
The simple, but this is what these games come down to.
Oh my god!
No, go ahead, take it away.
That was a Wiebe level list about yourself.
Of being
unreal.
Yeah, that was amazing.
List.
Yeah,
it's like you're hanging on your own rim, just be like, yeah, that was. I don't know. I can't. That was awesome.
Do you want to keep going?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
All right, let me throw this out there.
Did he make the point or did we?
I don't know. Are
you guys paying attention? Yes, I did.
Let me make this point. This game. Now, single elimination, extra time into penalty kicks. Houston made 1 sub in game 3 against RSL, and it was
big
Thor.
issue.
And that was it. And you look at an SKC team, which the way it's built right now, I think one of Gotti Kinder, Eric Tommy's not starting. So at a minimum, you have one of them coming off the bench. And then even if it is Kyrie Shelton or Willie Agata or whatever else is there, I think there's more depth. There's more game changers. There's more confidence.
Wouldn't call Kyrie Shelton a game changer.
depth. Fair.
Oh, I don't think I called
Well,
depth either.
Peter Vermees will put him on the field where Aliu and Franco were watching the shootout for Houston in the last game. So I think that's an advantage for SKC in this setup, depending on how healthy they are. But I do think Ndebe is a huge loss, not just the 2 goals. Over the course of the end of the season, the width he provided let Daniel Shalhoui play at his best, which is coming inside and being a second forward, playing off Pulido, or Ndebe underlapping and giving Shalhoui 1v1 situations. And I think him and Jake Davis are a big part of the game model for SKC because they play out through those players and then they play off of them in their build out rather than playing through Fontes and Rosero all the time. And so I think he'll be a massive loss for this team.
Tim Leibold would be your replacement there. I don't know where his health stands. He wasn't on the bench recently in these playoff matches. So I guess you have a couple weeks.
Graham Zusi, baby. Roger Espinoza.
Yeah, Zusi. I mean, I guess you can flip Jake Davis over. Yeah, it's a big question mark. They gotta hope Leibold can get it done. He only played about 850 minutes this year.
That's big Griff side.
Well, here he comes.
Yeah, you're staring down the barrel of Big Griffin Dorsey charging down the field.
Oh boy. All right, let's get to Atlanta United Columbus Crew. This was the final match of round 1, and it was a doozy, a 4-2 win by the Crew, and it's vindication. Dave, vindication for the way Wilfred Nancy wants to play, the way he sees the game, his idea that the scoreboard doesn't matter, just the way we play with the ball and without the ball matters. And the Crew, I mean, they smacked Atlanta. They came out and punched them right in the face. And then when there was that little wobbly moment in the second half, about an hour in, where you thought, could this go the wrong way for them again? They got it through the finish line.
Yeah, it's sort of what you said about Houston, which is like this year's a victory already. Obviously, they won a trophy. Columbus didn't. And Columbus also made these really cool T-shirts that Tom got one of, and I didn't. So I think Columbus's season is a bit of a failure.
It's the Crew. It's instead of the 3 construction workers, it is Ramirez, Rossi, and Cucho.
Yeah. So I think there's
Matan might have to be on the shirt.
I think that, yeah, probably. Well, if Matan gets left out, me and him could hang because I didn't get a T-shirt. So I feel the same way. But this is year 1 of Wilfred Nance's project. Success. They won a playoff series. They showed they could play in high-level games. They showed that they could get over the line and win. And I think for him, it is the completion of he didn't have enough tools with Montreal last year to play his style and still win. And then he was able to do it with Columbus this year. And then going forward, I think there's full trust now that top to bottom, everyone's on the same page. Can you continue to add to this and add the right pieces and go forward? But you needed that proof of concept. And so to do it in the postseason and say, we played our game model, we believed in ourselves, and the depth of cycling Gressel out of the team, bringing Mo Farsi and like being able to trust more players than just the 11 and say, I've built this depth and I've sort of worked with all these players over the course of the year. It's just massive. And I think the vibe in the building was that of Columbus won MLS Cup a few years ago. It was COVID. That sucks. They didn't have a full crowd, whatever. But it feels like this fan base is connected to this team now, and like it's a dream scenario.
If you're Bez Pachinko, if you're Crew fans, if you're anybody within the organization, I think the win is not that he got the best out of Cucho Hernandez or, you know, Darlington Nagbe is a very good player in a possession-based system, etc. It's to what you said, all the guys that were sort of afterthoughts or not big parts of the project who then became those things and grew in confidence and the thought of, oh, with more than 1 year, with multiple transfer windows, with an opportunity to build this exactly how we see it and use MLS Next Pro and create this like virtuous cycle, what can Wilfred Nancy do? If he can do it with this, with Matan coming back and instead of being, you know, shunted off into the nether regions, he's like, no, this dude's about to be a double-digit assist man for me. He's going to be the one that spots the pass to Rossi and plays the inch-perfect ball in the playoffs must-win game. You know, I guess I really wanted Sean Zawadzki to score a goal in this game. It was Edmondson.
Edmondson did.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I tweeted right afterwards. I was like, Sean Zawadzki banger. It's like me and the Zawadzki family that care that much. Somehow I missed that. But like all the Morera, all these guys that were here, you know, and then they were all the way up here after they got done with a year of Wilfred Nancy. That has to give you huge hope for what the ceiling is in the future, because I don't think we've come anywhere close to scratching it.
Yeah, and that's the most valuable asset a team could have in this league, where you have, like, yeah, he's made Cucho Hernandez better. He made Georgi Mihailovic better. He made Romo Kyoto better. All these players have had their best seasons ever. And then you look at Malty Edmondson was benched by NYCFC and available for anybody. And he was a left back. And now he comes here as a left center back. He's been awesome. Steven Moreira is fine. He was fine as a right back under Caleb Porter. I had him in my best 11 this year for playing at right center back. Like they had this stretch where they played a back three without a natural center back for like 10 games in a row. And like the way that, and Mo Farsi really well, the pipeline from Crew 2 to the first team into Nancy's hands to make them better players. All of those players are outperforming their salary cap hit, their budget hit, their value. And not to make this, just binary and looking at it in like cold business like, but in a league like this, that's where you get the most advantage if you have the bottom half of your rosters outperforming and better than the, slots 11 to 18 for every other team, because anybody in Wilfred Nance's system, if they are the right kind of profile and the right fit, are going to play better. And again, like Montreal and Columbus, all of those attackers have had their best seasons ever under Wilfred Nance. This isn't a blip. This isn't a one guy did well. This isn't like, this is the system. This is Wilfred Nance. And if Cucho would have been a 5 million player under any other coach, a 10 million player under any other coach, he's a $15 million player under Wilfred Nance, and just kind of going down the list. And that makes it so much easier to build a team.
I think this is a fun team with free agency now for guys who are like, I want to go play there, right? I think there'll be a lot of guys in this league that have played in MLS for a while that watch things that are like, I know what I can do under him, and I know he gives players a chance. I think that's going to be fun. My man Will Sands is going to cook next year. Get out of the way. Yeah.
Do you think Julian Gressel will be there?
I don't know.
He should be, but I don't know either.
I thought Danny Higginbotham made a really good point on the broadcast about part of starting Mo Farsi was defensive. That Farsi is more comfortable coming inside and being another center back. He's a little bit, well, he's not more physical than Julian Gressel, but he defends more physically. I also thought Gressel struggled. Like, again, I think Yaya Bo is the other example, is like they need to be difference makers in the attack or they are negatives on the field. And Gressel didn't shoot in that first game. And then in the second game, again, he got to the end line, didn't pull it back, didn't find a teammate. And so you looked at a series where it's like Gressel's not performing to his highest level. He is a free agent, right? So
Correct.
Is that a recruiting tool with him? Is that they benched him for the biggest game of the season? I don't know, but he's in the building. So if he wants to be a part of it, if he likes the project, you're not going to get any better.
He was celebrating heartily on all the goals.
And that's great. And I hope he's on the field in the next game, although I love Mo Farsi.
Torn.
Yeah.
David Goss torn right in front of
I mean, that's kind of how this whole Crew team is. Like, this team is so fun. There's so many moments that are enjoyable about the way they play. And what was fascinating about this game, and I think we'll see it again against Orlando because it's similar to, we'll talk about the 4-3 game between those two teams to close out the regular season, is like they can get on the ball and knock it around for a while, and yet they still find gaps in transition that transition-heavy teams look for. And so they're dangerous in both ways of like, if it's not there and they decide to slow it up and start to rotate it, they can pull you apart. It's not a bad thing where some teams, LAFC would be an example, or maybe Seattle at times, of like, they're going to panic to push in transition because they don't want to play against a set defense and they don't want to have to knock it around. And Columbus can do both. If Darling Nagbe's shooting, like, you're already winning because he's not even taking shots most of the time.
Look, I did not think that that Farsi and Yeboah and the outside backs were like, they're still not a defensive strength. Atlanta's chances came from playing them behind them and isolating them on a runner on the back post. Like, that's still an issue for the Crew. They still have problems in those situations, still have problems with physical forwards who find space in the box. And Orlando City are going to have a lot of those things.
And part of that's on Schulte. Schulte doesn't like physical contact. He doesn't want to come off his line into challenge 50-50s. And Yakumakis took advantage of that, and Duncan McGuire will as well. So there's a lot of this Orlando team. Are we getting there?
Yeah, Sunday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, there's a lot of this Orlando team
the
that fits well. And when you go back and watch the 4-3 game, Facu Torres didn't start. I think it was coming off an international break.
Yeah.
Ivan Angulo had a goal and an assist in which he swapped wings over to Yeboah's side, and he was able to basically pick up the ball wide open when they forced turnovers. And one time he got a cross into Ojeda. The other, he went in and scored himself. There's a lot of players on this Orlando team that can take those spaces that Columbus leaves. But at this point, you have to assume Columbus is going to have like 70% possession.
Yeah, a lot. Orlando are going to Orlando. Like, the idea that, hey, at home now we play with the ball and we can break teams down. That's true. That's not going to be their overriding game plan. It is interesting and poetic, though, to have this be the next matchup between the two teams. The 4-3 Orlando win was one that Nancy was just apoplectic afterwards of like, this is what we worked on the entire international break, was closing down games. It's been our Achilles heel all season long. We come out in the first opportunity to do it with a 3-1 lead, I believe, and we blow it.
3-1 in the 70th
Like, he was just absolutely quietly fuming after that. And the crew changed. After that match, the crew's ability to sort of like look around and be like, oh, you know, we don't have to leave massive gaps. Oh, our focus levels at the end of games can be better. And they played more like a playoff team the entire way down, and that's what sets them up now for this matchup. What do you think, Tom? Who's got the edge?
Think like we give the Columbus Crew so much credit that they well deserve. It'd be easy to say Columbus here, hey, they're going to dominate the ball, all this stuff. But man, Orlando over the second half of the season have been just about the best team in the league, right? Like I think it'd be silly to doubt them again here. I think that they're going to be more pragmatic, like you said. That's how they're going to play, like an Oscar Pereira team with all of these kind of good quality attackers, but how they can lock it down defensively and how they can be really, really difficult to play against. I'll give Orlando the edge.
This is maybe the most fun matchup outside of Seattle, LA, which just has all the history.
Unless Oscar Pereira really dirties up the game and like.
Oh, Schlegel is going to start at a 110.
What are we talking about here?
I'm saying
win.
The 4-3
start
was so much fun. I don't think it's going to be that open on Orlando's side again. So
no, they want to.
That's the only thing I'm worried about here.
They want those transition opportunities. Angulo for sure starting in this one. Yeah.
Yeah, Orlando's home. They have the advantage. That's the nature of Major League Soccer. Orlando has a lot of talent. Like I said, I think a lot of talent that can take advantage of openings. I believe in Columbus's belief in their game model and in their team. So I'm going to be a mark on this one and say Columbus right now.
That didn't go too well for you in the first round.
I picked 2 upsets in the first round. Neither of them happened. There was literally only one upset the entire first round. But this is single game, which is a little bit different.
It is.
And there is a history for Orlando of when the game's not going their way at home, it feels more like pressure than inspiration. And maybe they're past that, or maybe this team is in a different mode because they already won a playoff series. They're a young team. Maybe they're at the start of a build, whatever. But that's something we've seen in the past, and I worry about that again.
Orlando Columbus gets us started in these conference semifinals on Saturday, November 25th. Yes, I know, that's 12 days from now. 5:30 p.m. Eastern time on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. Then the game we haven't talked about in the conference semis is Cincinnati Philly. That's also on Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Matt Miazga is your defender of the year, beating out Tim Parker and Ymar. No sign of Robin Janssen there. I want the full voting numbers. I need to know. Just for my own content purposes, to be honest with you. But he is, as Anders, I believe, noted in the rundown, celebrating by being suspended for the biggest game of the year for FC Cincinnati. 6 series.
That is the most Clifton, New Jersey thing.
I've been saying it's the most Metro thing he could have possibly done to troll Metro supporters, to then have that happen to him. It's all very fitting. I mean, there is a lot of history here between these two sides. They're going to look across at each other, and it's going to be the Spider-Man meme of like, oh, what's up, Pat? Hey, Albright, used to be with us, and now you're there, and now you're sort of taking over the mantle in the Eastern Conference. Is there a changing of the guard moment about to happen, Dave? Because, look, there's issues Philadelphia-wise on personnel. Yeah, Miazga's out, but Glesnes, Wagner, maybe Carranza, Philly might be punching with one hand behind their back.
I think there's a real possibility that this is that changing point of, I think Ernst Tanner and parts of that Philly team have pushed things to a historic level. But back to the conversation, Cincinnati saw things and then adds money and sort of takes it to another level. And Lucho Acosta is going to be there for a while. Feels like Bupenza might be there for a while. Miazga is going to be there for a while. Your hope would be Celentano as well. Wobodo. Like, this is a team built for the long term, and they've shown a really good ability to then fill in between those gaps, whether it's MLS veterans, whether it's draft picks, whether it's pulling players from around the league or going and finding pieces like Santi Arias, Junior Moreno in a trade. Like
Yerson Mosquera on loan fitting right in, and now he's got a ton of pressure.
So I think you talk about the years we've seen of Seattle, and it was a spine. And then, okay, different pieces here and there around that, but because the spine is strong, the floor is really high, and it's really easy for players to come in and get comfortable. I think that's the case for Cincinnati. And so I think it's a very real possibility. This is Ali Bedoya's last game ever for Philadelphia Union. That alone is probably going to close the door on an error when we talk about this club. And then you look at, is Glesnes coming back? Is Carranza coming back? Bedoya obviously is not. Is Jack McGlynn going to be sold in this offseason? We know Kai Wagner is a free agent. So there's a real possibility that this is it for that Philly group. And Cincinnati just starts from here and starts to be a dominant team. I mean, the odds that MLS Cup are in Ohio are pretty high right now. Between 4 teams can host and 2 of them are in Ohio. It's the center of soccer.
In the change,
I can't argue. I can't. Yeah. Bam. I just didn't see the O-H.
Yeah.
I-O. That's what you said.
Ohio.
Yeah.
With the changing of the guard, I mean, since he won the Shield this year, right? Like hasn't it already happened? I think we talk about eras there. Yeah, this is an end of an era in many ways this season for Philly because Bedoya isn't planned to be back. Kai Wagner isn't planned to be back. They've both been public about this and through our reporting. Carranza, I'm very much assuming is about to be sold. McGlynn will be at some point, whether it's in the winter or within a year, right? Like just kind of going up and down that team. Gazdag, Blake, Glesnes, and Elliott. Will that be like the core that's still there? Jose Martinez, sorry. So like this team is a lot different than even what it was last year. And like next year, again, Ali Bedoya is the heart and soul of that team. And he's 99% going to be gone unless they change their mind and find a way to reconcile and have him come back. But yeah, this is the end of an era. I think that it is a little poetic because of how much Philly DNA is in this Cincy team. And if Cincy eliminates Philly, and going back, they played an awesome playoff game last year in Philly. I unfortunately I wasn't able to go to MLS Cup because I had a wedding that day, which was just absolutely brutal time, and it sucks a lot to think about. So the best game I was at last playoffs.
What a great Tom
hoping that couple doesn't make it.
The best day of somebody else's life, a cherished friend and or family member of Tom Bogert, and he's like in a public forum, just like, what a brutal day, horrible timing, terrible day. I will always regret that moment.
So the best playoff game I was at last year was that Philly-Cincy game, and the atmosphere was electric. And again, it's going to be like that in Cincy. So I don't know. There's just a lot of themes here that make this that this could be the end of this particular Philly era. Even though, again, Ernst Tanner is still going to be there. Jim Curtin's still going to be there. A couple of the same nucleus is still going to be there. But it is clearly going to be a different era next year.
So an interesting thing about last year's playoff game was Philly came off the long break because they had the bye. And since he came in off the win at Red Bulls, every team will be coming off a fairly long break for this one because of the format and the way the international window is. And I think Philly showed last year they handled it really well. So like there's a little bit of experience there. Now this one's on the road, not at home. That's different. But I do think that there will be a high level of confidence for Philly. And if Carranza's healthy, it is totally different because Miazga out, Haglund out. I have asked if they'll change formation. Everyone tells me there's no chance.
I don't think there's any way.
So now you're playing a non-center back at center back. You're missing the defender of the year, and you could have 2 forwards that constantly are attacking, making runs into the channel, pulling center backs with them, and that like to play with each other. And it's something New England struggles with, and Philly used it to great effect in that series of the second forward making the run across the face of the first center back at the near post. And I think it's something Cincinnati will struggle with.
And quickly, I know that we have 12 days before this game or whatever it is. Woboto still hasn't come back to training, and not even in like a light phase. Like Pat Brennan has been kind of putting, and Laurel Fail has been putting out updates from training, and like as of this morning, they still haven't seen him.
Okay.
I thought there was a video coming.
I thought too.
I was like,
wow.
There's a wipe up there. You're getting ready for something.
I was like, does that mean lay out? Just stop talking. Just shut up and move on. So people just listening.
I think Anders was going to throw up the departures board up there for Newark just to keep you updated. Make sure you on time for your flight.
I'll be in sunny Miami. I'm going to enjoy the next few days.
If anyone's attending Soccer X, make sure to tweet at Tom and then go hang out with him.
He's looking for long, intimate conversations.
If you give me a Miller Lite or Heineken,
he would specifically like to talk about things he's tweeted about your team in the past that he's been wrong about.
And you have to yell at me. It can't be in like a call. Man, it has to be like, you idiot.
I mean, show him love.
Yeah, New Jersey. That's how I say hello in New Jersey.
Yeah. I do think Carranza is basically everything because his ability to connect with not just Ua, but with Gazdag and bring out the best in Gazdag is just sort of what makes that front 3 tick. Okay, let's get into the offseason odds and ends. There's a lot of coaching openings. I believe there's 8, depending on what happens with Nico Estevez. There could be 9, but I think we all feel pretty strongly he'll probably stick around in Dallas. Any updates on these openings? Minnesota, who have hired a sporting director, but he arrives later than now?
Yeah, so they've hired a sporting director from Barnsley. He's under contract for the summer, as I'm told that they're still negotiating. Like, either Barnsley needs to hire a new CEO to be more comfortable to let him go earlier, or like Minnesota needs to compensate Barnsley. And that's probably what it is. It's just working out compensation. It'd be really, really weird to me if they hired a sporting director that they knew 100% that they couldn't bring into the summer.
You gotta hire a coach too.
That's so like I'm assuming that they're probably just haggling. Both sides are haggling over the compensation deal.
Barnsley's the team that Neil Collins coaches, former Rowdy's coach. They hired him to coach the team.
Former Gerhard Struber.
Former Gerhard Struber club. What? They should join MLS.
Oh.
Shane Murphy, all this stuff.
Is Billy Bean involved with them as well? Was that right?
I don't know. Maybe it's JJ Watt.
No, I think that's
I'm just naming people who own soccer teams.
Barnsley.
You like your bees?
Yeah, the B teams.
Up the bees. Brentford.
Chicago's open. New England's open. DC's open. Colorado's open. Charlotte's open. Montreal's open. Red Bulls could be open.
Yeah.
Any rumblings here?
All right,
what's the WhatsApp inbox look like these days?
It's in shambles. It's always in shambles. So my assumptions, I'm just going to rattle off some random info that I have. My assumption is that Red Bulls are going to stick with Troy Lezane. My assumption is that Chicago is going to stick with Frank Klopas, but they need to officially announce Heights and Peltzer are returning, if that is still indeed the plan, which again, 99% sure it is. New England are getting closer, or I'm sure that they will accelerate in hiring a sporting director, and then that sporting director will hire a head coach.
So it's not going to be the current group there that would
no. So that's what I was going to say, that it might be Kurt and Awful just getting the job full time, because I know that they've spoken or whatever. Where else here? Montreal, I don't understand why they got rid of Hernan Losada. I still don't get it. Like
I don't get it either.
I think he was dealt a
Well, I don't think
hand.
it's not about why they got rid of him. It's why did you hire him in the first place?
Yeah.
And they clearly didn't have any faith in him if this was what it, like, I thought he had a fine year. He was dealt a bad hand, and they did fine. DC United, I don't understand what's taking so long to hire a GM. I really don't. They've been without one for 13 months. I think a month ago I reported that we kept being
there's no urgency there.
we kept being told, like, I thought that they wanted to hire somebody by decision day, and I was like, all right, it'll be by the first round of the round.
So class to not.
And now
have
here
a
we
GM
are
for like 13 months. To be like, we're doing it by, and this is important to know.
Real.
Decision day,
which was key for them because they had a buy on decision day, so they were off since September 21st.
Like their offseason started even earlier. I don't. And again, from speaking with people around the league and people who may be candidates for this job or maybe future candidates for GM jobs, this is not a good look. I can say with 100% certainty that people that could be candidates for this are like, I really don't like the look at, like, what are they doing? It just looks like dysfunction or chaos. So their inability to make decisions.
I have a thought here. It might be dysfunctional and it might be chaotic.
Yeah.
It might not just look like it.
No,
it might be.
But again, there's only 29 or 30 counting San Diego now. There's only 30 of these jobs. So no matter what, like, you're always going to talk yourself into it, like, because these are dream jobs.
I was going to say, I don't believe any of those people that are like, I might not like this.
Yeah.
Like, you might not like the offer is not on your table right now.
Anybody, I'm telling you, anybody who has 2 options, it is not going to be DC because of that.
And I think it's fair then also for fans to say, like, nothing has changed.
Yeah. Yeah,
which
right.
is
Like,
the reality of the club top down.
Again, like, they've been without a GM since last October, and it shouldn't take this long. It just really shouldn't. Colorado, Chris Armas is a finalist. I'm assuming that's where that'll end up, but again, nothing's been done. Chris Little was another one of the finals. Pamadou Ka as well, who I'm sure is going to be a candidate for Charlotte because he's on the Charlotte staff. They know him. They obviously rate him. They brought him in. Does that hit everybody? I think I hit everybody. New England already hit that. Yeah. And again, Charlotte just started, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Getting names?
For sure.
Throw out any names for anybody?
I mean, I've got a 75 person.
Yeah, we've got
list.
a bunch.
What type of name?
How about this? How about ones we definitely think will get a job and let's matchmake them?
I don't know if he'll 100% definitely get a job, but I do know that Bruce Arena is not retired and he's absolutely intent on coaching again. So he's going to be a name to watch in this.
He feels like DC.
My guess would be Charlotte.
I think
because if it was going to be DC, it probably would have like.
But if it's Charlotte, would it be Zoran Crenetta hiring someone?
Yeah, what
under him?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't like
GM
so
experience?
Even when Bruce. So I reported that Bruce reached out to DC and like put his name in the ring. Like it wasn't to be also the GM.
Interesting.
It was just be head coach.
So the ones
He doesn't want that mess anymore.
So let me do
Or
it this
DC
way.
didn't wanna have
I think people I would interview, people I would expect to get interviewed. I think Robin Fraser is high on that list.
Yeah.
Uh,
Gio Savarese.
Gio Savarese is high on
Gio
that
feels
list.
like New England to me, but
Yeah.
again, you have to get the sporting director in place.
Then I think there's a few assistants who would make sense. Ante Razov, one. Brendan Burke, I think, a big one. Houston assistant, has coached as a head coach with Colorado Springs and successful. Came out of the Philly Academy. Freddie Juarez, you'd be surprised if he didn't get interviewed.
But he doesn't seem to want that, right? Like,
I don't think that's true. I think he thought the assistant coach in Seattle was more stable and a better opportunity than the unknown temporary spot on a club with no owner.
well, that's fair.
So I would assume he will get talked to. Mark Dos Santos has been back in interview processes as well. You mentioned Pa Modoka. You'd assume coming off the success now of Cincinnati that either Kenny Arena or Dom Kinnear are back in a conversation for clubs.
Yes. No,
Correct.
no, like because I forgot Dom Kinnear is a name that I forgot to read. That is something that people have kind of like. Again, he hasn't been a head coach for a while. I forget what year was his last at UC.
I think San Jose was his
San Jose.
last. Oh no, he was
LA.
the Galaxy intern.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Briefly LA, yeah.
So yeah, but
Mikey Varis with the U20s.
BJ Callahan, the U.S. national team assistant, absolutely as well. Adrian Heath, I know that he isn't retired either, right? Like so. I think these are like, sorry to kind of trample what you were saying here.
No,
Josh,
we've
but-
mentioned Hugo Perez in the past. He is not with El Salvador anymore, right? Didn't
No,
he leave?
correct.
Yeah, so he's another one that makes sense in sort of that conversation. He's been around. I think you have said, or someone has said, that Rafael Vicky has brought his name. Has put his name
he
out
wants to
there
come
as
back
well.
down less. Yeah.
Some of the other big assistants, I think Javier Morales. It's a tough one to leave. He works with Messi. His son plays, but
he's going anywhere.
but like I think he's probably one of those guys who's ready for a head coaching
It's a good-
opportunity.
This is a good opportunity to set himself
Another
up long
assistant
term.
that I've been to, Davey Arnaud is somebody who has impressed me. He spoke with a couple teams this offseason as well. Dave Vandenberg is somebody whose name has been brought up to me in some of the, and now he's not with New England anyway, so he's, who knows if he'll be a head coach or assistant next
If
time.
I was running a team, I would talk to Mehdi Bellucci. I think he's done really well at NYCFC. They play good soccer. They've developed players. Like if you're one of those clubs who's looking for someone who can do a little more than just run your first team, I think he could be really interesting. Lower division guys, Danny Cruz, Ben Pierman, who just coached Memphis last year, just brought Charleston to the final.
I'd just push back on this. Like, when was the last USL? And not that Danny Cruz is probably the biggest name, but like Troy Lezane had to leave. Well, he was like co-coach of the year one year with New Mexico.
Yeah.
He had to leave to become Gerhard Struber's third assistant, right? Like
Second?
whatever it is. But like he left to be an assistant for an MLS team.
Yeah.
Like so, the pipeline for USL to MLS hasn't been strong. And again, I'm not saying that that's good or bad. I'd say it's probably bad because you're limiting the pool of options. But I think if we're talking realistically, I think it's much more likely that somebody like Danny Cruz goes to become an assistant at an MLS club before getting an offer. But hey, maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Eric Quill was one that stood out because if Estevez were to leave, he's successfully coached with Texas. He's been around MLS. And then what did we say? Miles Joseph is staying
Correct.
with Portland?
Miles Joseph and Liam Ridgewell staying on Phil Neville's staff.
Okay. So that's a bunch of the like Dome Tarrant,
Oh yeah,
Ashley Cole, Robbie Keane are both coaching. These are guys where
Dome is somebody that's a good. He should be kind of in that top list of like of Gio Savarese, of Adrian Heath. I think Dome should be kind of somewhere around there. And
one name we haven't said is Caleb Porter.
yes, he should be in this session as well. Like again, I know that there's the stories about behind the scenes stuff of whether he's easy or fun to work with, but like the dude's won everywhere he's been. You know, I know that we've had this argument plenty of times on Extra Time about like, well, has he kind of underperformed expectations with the quality of his head? But like, look, one MLS Cup in Portland, one MLS Cup in Columbus. Those guys get another chance.
I think what's been proven with Phil Neville, and then back to the last offseason, or maybe even still with Frank Klopas, I think with Ben Olsen, is like there's not a huge level of trust for unknown. And so if you've done it before, like you're going to get in the door and you're going to be considered. And I think that's where a Caleb Porter, a Gio Savarese, an Adrian Heath, a Chris Armas, I think that's where that conversation is like, this could be interesting, USL coach, assistant coach, whatever, but we don't know how bad it could get. Where with those,
look,
it's been bad in the past.
If you're a GM out there and you saw how things went for the Houston Dynamo with Paulo Nagamura,
Yeah.
who, by all indications was a very good coaching prospect, and it just blew up immediately. And then look what Ben Olsen's been able to do. Like that's a little bit of a warning shot to you of like, man, can I stake my job security? Can I stake a year of my project? Can I take that risk? Because there is risk in unknown, no doubt about it.
And Ben Olsen wasn't like, not only was it not like a quote unquote sexy hire, like there was a lot, like you can go back to like when the news was announced and look at the replies from Houston fans and how many people were like, oh, LOL, this is so stupid. He's like, yo, there's another retread, all this. And it's
pretty widely. He wasn't coaching.
Yeah. And
had not been coaching for a while.
Again, I think that we get caught up in this too much because, like you said, like, ooh, like Palomat Nagamori is unknown, or ooh, this person's like, there's not a 100% success rate either way. And to just be like, oh, well, he didn't do great with DC United a couple of those years, so this guy must suck. Or anyway, like again, like, oh, Minnesota United missed the playoffs, so why would you ever want Adrian Heath? And like, it's just not that simple.
It's interesting with the Adrian Heath, Caleb Porter a little bit on this list. You guys talked about Bruce Arena is now that we have examples of guys doing both jobs. How does a GM feel about hiring someone who isn't pushing for their job, but like has experience where if something goes wrong, they can then say, well, it's not cohesive enough. I need that role. And so I think that's an interesting spot as an independent GM to be in of like, am I really going to hire this coach who wants my role as well? But that's all part of trying to figure out what type of club you want to build. And I think to Pat Onsted's credit, he's like, I know the roster I'm putting together and how it should play.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing a coach who's on board with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you'd hope a good GM does.
All right, before we get out of here, Fabrizio Romano has reported that clubs on any continent offering large amounts of money could potentially sign Chicharito, who says that he is recovering nicely and is prepared to play. Do you have additional information, Tom, or is that...
Would you just like to upvote this?
Yeah, one of 1,000 teams on 4 different continents might sign Chicharito.
Just
do you think he'll sign in Malta? Maybe Gibraltar?
I think we can
Gibraltar? I like that.
Yeah, they rhyme.
Like a little bit of a Dr. Zeus comment. Yeah. Could he sign on Malta or Gibraltar? Like,
would he do it on a train?
Yeah.
Or in the rain?
Yeah. Not in LA.
Do we want to do anything?
Let's give him to an MLS team. Let's hand Chicharito over to an MLS. Who you give him to?
Depends on what the money is, man.
What's the money got to be? What do you think? What's the market dictate? Could he be a DP?
He shouldn't be.
Short term?
Shouldn't be.
Okay. How about a TAM DP combo that can be bought down?
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
A lot of teams.
All right. Tell me why Houston shouldn't sign him then.
Yeah, I think that you want Houston.
Exactly. That's why I'm asking you. I'm trying to lead I'm trying to lead the horse to water right now.
Is it because Anders is screaming in your ear about Sebastian Pereira?
Yeah, that's
screaming
another
in
reason.
my ear.
If I'm Houston, I'm absolutely not signing. Houston should go in a different direction.
What direction should Houston?
A DP from somewhere, an in-prime player, and not to have the cloud, I guess, of Chicharito hanging. Like, I don't think that's a great fit.
Okay.
It needs to be somewhere where
they would sell out.
Ache and Chicharito.
Ache said he wants the fans to come out.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be really fun.
Maybe a 1+1. How about a 1+1?
Yeah. I mean, if you're Chicharito, would you sign that?
Probably not. But you got some
Chicharito.
But he's got 75 different countries that are offering him.
Yeah, true.
You have to offer
true.
him.
And it's like presidents and prime ministers. They just it's not even clubs. They just come and sign him to the countries in Europe. He's one of those guys where he'll score goals wherever, and if he's healthy and does his thing. He's not a chance creator.
No.
So that's part of with some of these teams.
That's why I like Houston.
Right. Like he wouldn't fit in a Salt Lake because you wouldn't play him next to Chicho Arango. He wouldn't be the mythical Nashville signing that we all talk about all the time. I think that should be Nico Ladero, by the way. I'm putting that out there.
He feels like a welcome to Chicago Fire on the 3-year DP deal. That's what that sounds
Could be. Yeah.
Like to me.
Just to make sure you bury your young signings a little bit deeper. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not saying this in a positive light.
Orlando. Big dunk going at Belgium, and Chicharito carries the mantle for a little bit.
Feels like they would go back young.
What about LAFC? They don't have a great symbol.
I was looking through. I didn't see any great fits here, but
I like
LAFC
that.
could be tight.
I like that.
Yeah, it'll come down to the contract.
I hope I didn't just crack my cell phone screen dropping at the end of the show. All right, that's it for us. Anything else? Clean it up? No. We're just chilling for about 12 days before
USA games.
Yeah, that's true.
Miles Robinson, Atlanta career potentially over.
Yeah, we didn't do the Atlanta postmortem.
We'll be back on Thursday to talk about it anyway. All right, enjoy your week, everybody. Adios.